Maplewood, an exquisite neighborhood in the heart of the city where wide, stone-paved streets weave through luxurious mansions, surrounded by rows of radiant maple trees that glow in autumn. Meticulously manicured gardens, intricate fountain statues, and sleek sports cars parked neatly in front of grand houses define this prestigious district. This is the home of the elite, business moguls, celebrities, and powerful figures. It has everything except simplicity. Standing proudly in the heart of this neighborhood is the residence of Isabella Monroe, a pristine white mansion with soaring domes and glass walls that shimmer under the brilliant sun. Its garden is flawlessly maintained, with a sparkling blue swimming pool at its center, illuminated by elegant LED lights. Every corner of this mansion is not just a living space but a stage, perfectly curated for photo shoots and vlogs that fuel Isabella's social media empire. With millions of followers, she has crafted an image of effortless perfection. Each morning, Isabella wakes up on a king-size bed draped in silk sheets, reaching for her high-end smartphone to snap a flawless just woke up selfie. Her schedule is meticulously planned by her team: morning yoga by the pool, afternoon designer fittings from luxury brands, and evening live streams where she shares her dream life with eager fans. Every aspect of her existence is carefully controlled to maintain an illusion of absolute glamour and desirability. But right next to this world of splendor lies a completely different reality. Adjacent to Isabella's grand estate stands a modest, time-worn house with an aging tiled roof and a weathered wooden fence. This is the home of Walter Jenkins, a man in his 60s who spent his life working diligently and now enjoys the peace of retirement. Unlike his opulent neighbors, Walter does not own a sports car, designer clothes, or even care about social media. His life is measured in simple joys: mornings spent reading the newspaper on a creaky wooden chair, and peaceful strolls with his most loyal companion, a chocolate-brown Labrador named Buddy. Buddy is more than just a pet. He is family. Every morning, the two walk along the quiet streets, savoring the stillness before the city awakens with the rush of traffic and the demands of modern life. For Walter, nothing is more precious than a warm cup of coffee, a gentle breeze, and watching Buddy play happily in the yard. Two worlds, one drenched in the blinding light of fame, where beauty and wealth define a person's worth, the other grounded in serenity, where happiness comes from life's simplest moments. A mere wooden fence separates them, yet they exist as entirely different realities, ones that have never collided until one fateful day. The noisy night. That night, Isabella's mansion was more dazzling than ever. LED lights changed colors, sweeping across the crystal-clear pool, reflecting a shimmering glow onto the swaying cocktail glasses. The pounding EDM music reverberated through the space with deep bass, creating an electrifying atmosphere. Stylish guests gathered around the banquet tables, their laughter and the clinking of glasses filling the air. Amidst this extravagant scene, Isabella was the star. She donned a glittering dress that accentuated her flawless curves. One hand held a glass of champagne, the other her phone, as she turned to the camera with a sultry voice. "Hello, everyone. This is the vibe tonight. The music is fire. The drinks are elite. Just look at how amazing everything is. Who's jealous right now? Drop a heart in the comments." Her live stream chat exploded with admiration. "OMG, you're so fabulous. I wish I were there with you. How do I get a life like yours?" Isabella smirked, satisfied, flashing a perfect smile for her viewers. But just as everything was going smoothly, an unexpected sound cut through the party. "Woof, woof, woof!" Buddy, the loyal Labrador of Walter, barked loudly. He wasn't just reacting to the noise. He sensed something unusual. His ears perked up, the fur on his neck bristling, his eyes sharp with alertness as he faced Isabella's mansion. His powerful barking shattered the lively atmosphere. "What the hell?" a girl shrieked, nearly spilling her wine. "That crazy dog is ruining our party!" a man snapped, glaring toward the fence separating the two homes. Isabella frowned. Annoyance flared up inside her like a tiny spark, quickly spreading into an uncontrollable blaze of frustration. She had spent hours preparing for this night, from choosing her outfit, styling her hair, perfecting the lighting, down to how she held her champagne glass for the best angles. This wasn't just a party, it was an event, a crucial part of her online persona. Everything had to be flawless. And now a damn dog dared to ruin it? Isabella clenched her jaw. It felt like someone had just poured ice water over her in the middle of her perfect moment. Somebody go tell that old man to shut his dog up. I'm live streaming, and my followers do not want to hear that terrible noise. Before anyone could act, a figure emerged from the darkness. Walter, calm and composed, wearing a simple sweater, walked steadily toward the fence. With just a gentle pat on Buddy's back, the dog immediately quieted, though his watchful gaze remained fixed on the party. Walter stood there, neither angry nor irritated. Instead, his voice was low, steady, and firm. Apologies for the disturbance. The dog is just acting on instinct. I'd appreciate it if you could lower the volume a bit so it doesn't disturb others. At that moment, Isabella felt an invisible punch land squarely on her pride. An old man, a dog, daring to interrupt her party, making her look inconsiderate in front of millions watching online. She could already imagine the incoming flood of comments, criticisms about selfishness, hashtags like #Karen respect your neighbors. If that happened, the perfect image she had painstakingly built could crumble overnight. She gripped her champagne glass tightly, holding back a sharp retort on camera. But inside she was seething. She wouldn't let this slide. With a cold, cutting smile, she spat out, emphasizing each word like a blade. Who do you think you are to come here and lecture me? This is my house, my party. If you can't control your dog, then get lost. Some guests chuckled in support of Isabella. A woman crossed her arms, smirking. Yeah, old folks should just go to bed early and stop ruining our fun. Walter remained unfazed by the provocation. He simply exhaled softly and smiled knowingly. Have a good night, everyone. With that, he turned away, walking back into his house. Buddy followed, but not before casting one last wary glance at the rowdy partygoers. Isabella crossed her arms, her face burning with fury. She felt humiliated. How dare an old man disrupt her party? Ruin her flawless live stream? An idea flashed in her mind. Isabella tightened her grip on her glass, then suddenly grabbed a porcelain plate from the table. She didn't think, she just wanted to vent her anger. Swoosh! The plate flew through the air, aiming straight for Buddy. A few guests gasped, some even stepped back in shock. No one was laughing anymore. A girl bit her lip, setting her glass down as she whispered to a friend, "We should go." And so, little by little, small groups of guests quietly began leaving, taking the energy of the party with them. The music was turned down, the excitement dwindled, and the once lively atmosphere faded into an awkward silence. Isabella stood in the middle of it all, seething with rage as she watched her perfect evening crumble before her eyes without being able to do a thing about it. That night, Isabella lay stretched out on her luxurious satin-covered bed, her eyes glued to the screen of her phone, fingers slowly scrolling through the comments from her recent live stream. Under the warm golden glow of the bedside lamp, her face no longer carried the radiant smile or cheerful demeanor she displayed on camera. Instead, a growing irritation settled in her expression. This was not how the night was supposed to go. Everything had been perfect. The dazzling lights, the electrifying music, the lavish setting. Every picture taken that evening could have been a viral sensation. Yet instead of being remembered as the queen of luxury and extravagance, she had become the subject of whispers and unwelcome criticism from people who had no idea what they were talking about. Her eyes narrowed as she read through a few comments. Doesn't seem like she respects her neighbors very much. Was it really necessary to be so harsh with an old man? Throwing a plate at a dog? Are you serious? She clenched her teeth and pressed her finger firmly against the screen, shutting it off. What the hell were these people thinking? She was Isabella Monroe. People followed her because they envied her life, because she was the embodiment of luxury and prestige, not to lecture her on how she should behave. But the anger didn't stop there. What frustrated her the most wasn't the online backlash. These people would move on to the next scandal soon enough. No, what truly infuriated her was the fact that she had let an old nobody and his ridiculous dog ruin her perfect evening. Her fingers dug into the silk sheets. She could still picture it. Walter emerging from the shadows, that insufferable calmness in his eyes, the measured tone of his voice, as if he had the right to lecture her, as if she were the one in the wrong. She shut her eyes, willing the memory away, but instead of calming down, she felt the fire inside her grow hotter. How do I get rid of him? The thought looped in her mind like a haunting melody. If Walter and Buddy weren't around, she could throw parties whenever she wanted, revel in music and laughter without a single complaint. More importantly, having her live stream interrupted had been a humiliation. She had never allowed anyone to tarnish her image, never let anything stand in the way of her pursuit of perfection. A small twitch in her eyelid signaled the spark of an idea. If she couldn't force Walter to leave, she could make him want to leave. Isabella propped herself up on her elbows, her gaze sharper than it had been just moments ago. A slow, knowing smirk crept across her lips. She knew exactly what she had to do next. Walter Jenkins would soon learn that in this neighborhood, there was only one person who decided who stayed and who left. And that person was her. The sun was already high when Isabella lazily stretched, the silk sheets slipping off her shoulders. She grabbed the phone beside her weekend, squinting as the screen lit up, showing that it was almost noon. A long night of partying left her head slightly heavy, but what irritated her more was the lingering frustration from the night before. She threw off the covers, slipped on a thin silk robe, and stepped outside to the backyard, her golden hair still tousled from sleep. As the bright sunlight hit her eyes, she instinctively raised a hand to shield them, until her gaze landed on a sight that reignited the flames of her lingering rage. Walter, and that dog. Walter sat in his old wooden chair, sipping a steaming cup of coffee with a peaceful smile on his face. Buddy dashed across the yard, ears perked up, tail wagging furiously each time he retrieved the ball Walter tossed for him. The two of them looked so at ease, so content, as if nothing in the world could disturb their little sanctuary. That stark contrast sent a fresh wave of irritation surging through Isabella. She folded her arms and marched straight to the fence, her voice sharp with annoyance. "Mr. Jenkins, I cannot believe you're still letting that filthy dog run around like this. It's disturbing me. Disturbing everyone. Do you even realize that?" Walter looked up, his gaze calm, yet unreadable. He set his coffee down and stood slowly, moving with a deliberate ease as if refusing to be rushed. "I apologize if Buddy is bothering you," he said evenly, "but he's simply enjoying his morning, just as I imagine you enjoy your evening parties." Isabella took a deep breath before letting out a scoffing laugh. "Are you seriously comparing that mutt to my lifestyle? I don't have time to waste lounging around, sipping coffee and playing with a dog like you do, Mr. Jenkins. I have a career. I have millions of followers. Do you think I have time to deal with this nonsense?" Walter remained composed, gently patting Buddy's head as the dog looked up at him and sensing the tension. Buddy let out a small whimper, shifting closer to Walter's side. "Miss Monroe," Walter said calmly, "I understand that your life is very busy, but I also have my own life. I've lived here long before you arrived, and I have no intention of leaving." Isabella's eyes widened in disbelief, her hands clenched into fists. "What do you mean by that? Do you really think I'm just going to let this go? This neighborhood is for people of class, people with money, people with status. Do you actually believe you belong here? An old man with a miserable mutt?" Walter's expression darkened slightly, but his voice remained steady. "Miss Monroe, money does not determine a person's worth. And Buddy is not miserable. He is loyal and kind, qualities I wish I could say the same about for many people I've met." His words cut through Isabella like a knife to her pride, her face flushed with anger. "What are you implying?" she snapped. "Are you saying I'm a bad person? Do you have any idea who you're talking to? I could make one post, just one, and you'd see just how quickly this entire neighborhood turns against you. You think you can stand against me?" Walter exhaled softly, a flicker of regret in his eyes. "Miss Monroe, I don't wish to argue with you, but I would advise you to remember that not everyone can be manipulated by what they see online. In the real world, actions have consequences." Isabella let out a low, mocking chuckle, her lips curling into a smug smirk. "Consequences? Do you really think you can scare me with that moral nonsense? Let me tell you something, Mr. Jenkins. You're just an old relic clinging to the past, and I am the future. I have the power here, and if you refuse to understand that, I will make sure you do." Buddy whimpered again, pressing against Walter as if trying to pull him away from the tension. Walter gently stroked the dog's fur before meeting Isabella's gaze, unwavering. "Miss Monroe," he said slowly, "your anger does not make you stronger. It only makes you reckless. I suggest you think carefully before you act." But Isabella wasn't listening anymore. Her mind had already latched onto a singular thought. Walter Jenkins needs to leave, by any means necessary. Her fists tightened, nails digging into her palms. No one talked to her like this. No one challenged her like this. If he wanted to be stubborn, she would show him just how ruthless she could be. Just wait and see, she muttered before turning sharply, striding back into her house and slamming the glass door behind her. Buddy remained still, his wide, round eyes watching the retreating figure of the young woman, while Walter simply shook his head. "We may have some difficult days ahead, Buddy," he murmured. The dog licked his hand as if to reassure him. He didn't fully understand what was happening, but he knew one thing: no matter what came next, he would stay by Walter's side. Walter took a sip of his now cold coffee, his gaze drifting toward the grand mansion, where behind those luxurious glass windows, a storm was brewing. That night, the lights from Isabella's mansion blazed across the entire neighborhood. The poolside became the heart of the party, where deafening EDM music thumped relentlessly. Flashing lights flickered nonstop, reflecting off the shimmering water. The raucous laughter and shouts of young partygoers echoed through the once quiet streets. Walter wasn't home. Only Buddy remained, loyally lying near the porch, watching his surroundings with his usual alertness. But he had no idea that tonight he would become the target of those who lacked even the faintest trace of compassion. A bleach-haired guy in a leather jacket, swaying to the music, suddenly halted when he spotted Buddy resting in the shadows. "Hey, look at that! The old man's dog is just sitting there like a loser," he laughed, pointing toward Buddy. A girl in a short red dress, her face caked in makeup, sipped on her cocktail before squinting at the dog and bursting into a shrill laugh. "It looks just as dumb as its owner. Ha! What if it's as old-fashioned as he is?" The group erupted in raucous laughter. Another guy, shirtless, flexing a dragon tattoo winding around his biceps, smirked. "You might be onto something. Let's see if this mutt knows how to adapt to modern times." He whipped out his phone, turned on the high-beam flashlight, and aimed it straight into Buddy's eyes. Buddy flinched, shrinking back, ears flattening against his head. The blinding light made his vision blur, leaving him disoriented. "Oh, look at that! It's scared! Ha ha ha!" Another guy, his hair dyed neon green, clapped gleefully. "More, let's see how much of a coward it is." One of them, holding the beer can, flicked a piece of leftover grilled meat onto the ground, feigning kindness in his voice. "Come on, doggy, here's some food. Don't be shy." Buddy hesitated, sniffing the air. The scent was tempting, but he didn't step forward. Something felt wrong. Instinct told him this was no act of kindness. The group burst into mocking laughter. "It's actually dumb. Ha! Guess the old man trained it to be some posh aristocrat. Hey, let's try something better." Suddenly, a guy raised his half-empty beer bottle, grinning maliciously. "Let's see if it's got any guts." Whoosh! The bottle spun through the air before smashing shatter. The glass exploded on impact with Buddy's front leg. Shards embedded deep into his flesh. He let out a sharp, pained yelp before staggering backward, bright red blood seeping into his fur and dripping onto the pavement. For a brief moment, silence fell, but only for a second before the entire group roared with laughter. "What a useless mutt! Look at it run! Ha 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 ha!" Terrified, Buddy trembled, his wide eyes filled with confusion and fear. He limped toward the house, seeking the only safe place he knew. With every step, droplets of blood dotted the concrete. But the torment didn't end. One of them yelled, "Throw something else. Teach it a lesson." He grabbed a crumpled soda can, crushing it in his hand before hurling it at Buddy. But this time Buddy had disappeared inside the house, curling into a corner, his body shivering in pain and terror. The fiery confrontation. When Walter pounded on Isabella's front door, the repeated chime of the doorbell sliced through the reverie. Some of the guests turned to look, annoyed at the interruption. Isabella sauntered toward the door, arms crossed, eyebrows raised in boredom. "What now, Mr. Jenkins?" she drawled. Walter stood firm, his presence like a storm about to break. "I want you and your friends to explain what happened to Buddy." A guy behind Isabella chuckled. "Oh God, it's about that stupid dog again?" Another yawned exaggeratedly. "Geez, old man, you act like we committed murder. It's just a dog." Walter clenched his fists, his voice lowering into something heavy and commanding. "You tortured him, and you think that's funny?" Isabella smirked, tilting her head. "You're blowing this way out of proportion, Jenkins. This is my party, my guests. If you don't like it, you can go back to your little shack and sulk." A tall, muscular guy behind Isabella stepped forward, his tone dripping with mockery. "What are you gonna do, old man? Preach to us? Gonna throw a moral tantrum?" Walter inhaled deeply, steadying himself. He had come to a realization. These people did not understand respect. They did not comprehend boundaries. Nothing he said would change. Without another word, Walter pulled out his phone, dialed a number, and spoke in a crisp, unwavering tone. I need the police here immediately. 15 minutes later, the sharp blare of police sirens sliced through the night. Isabella's smirk faltered. The once rowdy group exchanged uneasy glances, shifting uncomfortably. No one was laughing anymore. As soon as the police chief arrived and escorted the group of teenagers to the station, Walter wasted no time. He carefully lifted Buddy into his car and sped toward the nearest veterinary clinic. Throughout the drive, Buddy trembled in pain, his glossy eyes filled with fear. But as Walter placed a reassuring hand on his fur, the loyal dog fought to endure the agony, nestling his head against his owner's chest. The veterinarian immediately attended to Buddy. X-ray results confirmed that his front leg was fractured from the impact. It required a cast and weeks of treatment. Walter's heart ached as he watched his companion being bandaged. But at least now, Buddy was in good hands. As he stepped out of the clinic, Walter clenched his fists, not just out of anger, but out of determination to bring those responsible to justice. The truth revealed. Meanwhile, at the police station, tension filled the interrogation room. The police chief stood with arms crossed, staring at the screen where Walter's security footage replayed every second of the incident. The images flashed by, the teenagers shining flashing lights into Buddy's eyes, throwing food at him mockingly, and finally the brutal moment when the beer bottle was hurled, shattering against his leg. No one spoke when the video ended. The police chief turned to Isabella, who was still trying to maintain her composure. She leaned back in her chair, arms crossed, her expression unreadable but tinged with defiance. "Miss Monroe," the chief's voice was cold. "Do you have anything to say about this?" Isabella scoffed and shrugged. "It's just a dog. You guys are making a big deal out of nothing." A police officer slammed his hand on the table, causing several of Isabella's friends to flinch. "What did you just say?" His voice was razor sharp. "Do you understand that animal cruelty is a crime? You and your friends didn't just torment a helpless creature. You also made racist remarks, threatened someone, and disrupted public order. We are not letting this go." The air in the room became stifling. Some of Isabella's friends started shifting uncomfortably. One lowered his gaze, another bit her lip, clearly regretting their involvement. But Isabella remained stubborn. She leaned forward, her gaze sharp and challenging. "I am famous. Do you really think you can put me in jail? One single post from me, and this entire station will be swarmed with hate. Do you even know how many followers I have? They won't stand for this." The police chief watched her for a moment before a smirk curled on his lips. But there was no amusement in his expression, only a cold, cutting edge of reality. "Miss Monroe, you forget that the internet doesn't just have your fans. It's also where you will face the consequences. And right now, I guarantee this video will show the world exactly who you really are." Isabella opened her mouth to retort, but her breath hitched when she noticed another officer already holding a phone. In just minutes, the footage was uploaded to social media. And once the storm began, nothing could stop it. The wave of outrage. Isabella was bailed out that night, but the arrogance in her posture had faded. She unlocked her phone, ready to post a statement, but as soon as the screen lit up, her worst nightmare had begun. Everywhere online, the video of Buddy's abuse had gone viral. Hashtags like #CancelIsabella, #JusticeForBuddy, and #AnimalAbuser dominated social media. The comment sections of her post had turned into a war zone of outrage and condemnation. "I used to admire you, but now I'm disgusted. Beating a helpless dog for fun? You don't deserve to exist in the public eye. Losing all your brand deals is karma. Society has no place for people like you." She thinks being famous makes her untouchable? Not anymore. Major brands she was affiliated with publicly announced contract terminations, severing all ties with her. Luxury fashion houses that once displayed her face scrubbed her from their campaigns, as if she had never existed. She frantically called her manager. "Delete it all! Fix this now!" she shrieked into the phone. But the response was only a long silence. Then a cold voice finally spoke. "Isabella, no one can save you this time." Her blood ran cold. "What? What the hell do you mean?" "The company doesn't want to be associated with you anymore. The decision has been made." The call cut off. Isabella stood frozen. She desperately tried logging into her social media accounts, but every attempt failed. Her accounts had been permanently suspended. Everything she had built, her career, her fame, her influence, collapsed in a single night. She screamed in frustration, hurling her phone against the wall. But this time, no one cared anymore. Weeks passed, and while the public outrage faded, Isabella's career vanished completely. Her social media accounts remained banned. Major brands ignored her, and her name, once shining brightly, had become nothing more than a cautionary tale. Meanwhile, Walter's life gradually returned to its peaceful routine. Buddy had healed significantly, though he still limped slightly when he walked. One afternoon, Walter sat on his porch, sipping his coffee, while Buddy lay beside him, basking in the warm sun. A slow, hesitant set of footsteps approached. Walter looked up and immediately recognized Isabella Monroe. Gone were the designer outfits and flawless makeup. Now she wore a simple hoodie and jeans. No cameras followed her, no fans surrounded her, just a solitary girl carrying the weight of her downfall. She stopped a few steps away, hesitating, as if unsure whether she should speak. Her voice was barely above a whisper. I just wanted to say. She trailed off, her gaze falling to Buddy, who watched her cautiously, the scar on his leg still visible. Walter remained silent, taking another sip of his coffee, letting her struggle with her words. Can you? Isabella swallowed hard. Can you forgive me? Walter exhaled slowly, setting his cup down. He studied her carefully before finally speaking. Regret means nothing if you don't learn from it. She lowered her head, gripping the hem of her hoodie, her lips trembling slightly. Walter nodded toward Buddy. He forgives easier than I do. If you really mean it, start there. Isabella hesitated, then slowly crouched down, extending a tentative hand toward Buddy. She was no longer the arrogant, entitled girl from before, just a person seeking redemption. Buddy sniffed her fingers. Then cautiously, he wagged his tail once. A small gesture. But for Isabella, it was the first step toward rebuilding herself.